First question this evening, and again, everybody will get 4 minutes to answer. There is a significant amount of local road work that needs to be done. What is your plan to fund this large project? Would you propose a city income tax initiative, or is there an alternate solution? How will you pitch your idea to the public to get them to accept your idea?
On the other hand, we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can talk about an income tax. We can also talk about alternate pavement options. We can talk about ways that we can attract businesses and ways that we can bring in new population, but thus increasing our tax base. We can talk about things like having a pilot tax. Our top seven industries in town are nonprofits. They don't pay taxes, and the things that they own don't pay taxes. So we could discuss different alternatives to gathering tax revenue to fix roads that haven't been widely discussed in the community. At the end of the day, we need to have a menu of items to choose from and gather consensus and talk with our voters to see what is appealing, what is feasible, and also to find out what the priorities are. There are lots of roads in disrepair. We can all list them from our different wards. How important are the roads to us versus keeping our money in our pockets and not paying a higher tax? We need to decide on that. We can always complain about roads, but if you'd rather have 1% in your pocket, then you've made a decision about the roads. The other thing that we can discuss is comparing ourselves to local areas. Jonesville has a higher property tax than we do, and they have lovely roads. Perhaps we need to consider that. I'm not strongly endorsing anything outside of having a lot of options, discussing with our constituents, our voters, and our neighbors what is actually an appealing prospect. Because from the last election, the income tax wasn't appealing, so what would be? That's all.
Thank you, Emily. And now Patrick Flannery, Ward 4 candidate.
To fix the roads, my plan would be sort of a two-prong idea. Number one, we have a plan that the city created. They looked at all the roads and basically numbered the roads by what level of disrepair they were in. What I would like to do and what I would ask council to do is let's have the citizens of the city come into City Hall. We'd put that plan up, say, on a wall in the city and have them take a look at what this plan says. Right now it's on the website, but frankly it's a lot easier for me, and I'm sure there are other people out there, if you just see it physically in person. From there, judge for yourself. Do you think road, the one I live on is Budlong, is in worse disrepair than the one that's on Marion? And then let the city know what you think of those ideas. So we'd have a work session to have people come in and give us their ideas of which roads they think need to be done first. Now, while that's going on, what I would suggest is we also do the second prong, which is, first of all, take a look at the budget of the city and reduce it. Now, I'm the Vice President for Finance at Hillsdale College, and I can tell you that through the 10 years that I've had, 10 plus years now I've had in finance and accounting, there is no budget out there that can't be cut. It has to be. You can't sit there and tell me that if half the people moved out of the city, that the city would be unable to reduce her expenses. You just cannot convince me of that fact. So I would take a look at the expenses, see what can be reduced. I've already looked at the budget, and I've had a few ideas, but of course I want to discuss it with council first before those ideas be put in place. Now, including looking at expenses that are out there and how the expenses are, the city needs to look at her business processes. How are things done? How are they run in the city? All of us, well, hopefully all of us, took civics when we were in high school. Civics said the one basic idea, the one thing why government was created is to provide goods and services that aren't provided by the private sector. So what goods and services are the city producing? Does it have that the private sector could pick up and do? And I can promise you the private sector can do it a lot more efficiently than government can. because government is inherently inefficient. It's inefficient for a reason, because democracy, the greatest form of government that we have, has some inefficiencies. And that's why we as America are a capitalist society, because we know that private industry, she can provide for what the government can't. Now, while we're identifying those things, which, a couple things just to throw out there are, why does the city have a compost pile? Couldn't a nursery do that if that was outsourced? The bus system. Why are there no signs on it? Why do we have no advertising? Is it simply because of the fact that we're afraid of who might advertise on there? Well, their money's as green as mine, and if someone I don't agree with wants to advertise, good, great. They get to pay for my 1 cubic foot of sidewalk that's in front of my house that needs repair. So I would suggest that we take a look at that. Now, as property tax goes and city tax goes, I can tell you one thing and one thing only, is that taxes discourages businesses from coming in, that income tax does. Why would someone who owns a company, who earns an income, want to move a business into the city of Hillsdale if they're going to lose 1% of what they make, when they can simply go to Jonesville or to one of the neighboring townships right next door and earn 1% more? Anyone here knows that if you can just simply move 50 feet over to the left or the right and save money, you're going to do that. I'm going to do that. So income taxes, they'll discourage city growth. We need, as the other people have mentioned, more people here in this city working.
Thank you, Mr. Flannery. Again, that was the only question that our committee and our council member and mayoral candidates knew was coming. The rest of them, here we go. Our next question this evening: what can the city do about blight? And how would you personally work toward fixing this problem? Also, does the city need a code enforcement officer to do that job? Mr. Sessions.
Well, the first answer would be, the second one I should say. I do not believe that the city does need a code enforcement officer, that actually could be taken over by the city police, that they could actually enforce it and go around and give out the warnings and the citations. Secondly, blight is a very big problem in the city of Hillsdale. The property owners definitely need to take responsibility for their property, their buildings, everything that is on their property. But also, commercially downtown, blight is a problem too, and that needs to be taken care of too. So you actually have 2 problems. And actually you have 3 problems, because when I went door to door, now you have neighbors arguing with neighbors because they think that they've been turned over because of their blight and that they've been cited. And so you actually have 3 problems now that came out of it. So, but yes, blight is definitely a problem. You have to enforce it, and that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. Mr. Watkins.
Well, if you'd asked me this question about 2 months ago, I would have said a change in direction with staff. But today there's an entirely new staff in that office in the past few months, and from working with them on Planning Commission and other meetings, I can tell you they are working very diligently to clean up the unfinished business from the previous code enforcement officer, and they're also working to make their process more efficient. They're splitting up the code enforcement duties amongst the other people in the office, so there's not just one person burdened with everything. They can spread that out. I disagree that we don't need a code enforcement officer. I think there's too much to completely be handled by the police. The police have taken on tall grass, garbage totes that have been out by the street too long. That's the stuff they see when they patrol by, and that's an easy stop and fix. Or if the grass is out or if the leaf piles are in the street when they're supposed to be on the terrace, or on the terrace a month after pickup, and the stuff like that, that's a quick fix. When you start involving the police in a lot of the in-depth stuff that goes on, I don't honestly think, having done several ride-alongs with the police, I don't see how they would have the time to consistently do that. Some days they could have time to do that all day long, and other days they would have time to do none. At the council meeting last night, City Manager Brown had pulled out this stack of paper, and I don't know how many sheets it was, it's probably about that thick, of code enforcement reports that had yet to be even processed from the previous code enforcement staff, that the current staff is going to whittle through and to get processed. And that just, I think that illustrates how much of a problem there is and how much of that problem hasn't been addressed yet. There's been a lot of activity in town, especially in the residential properties, to improve the condition of properties. I think as Laura Smith had mentioned earlier, a lot of the rental properties are not managed well by their owners. I'm not saying every landlord in town is bad. I think most of them are great. But there's some that aren't, and there's some tenants that aren't good tenants. And when you get the two together and when neither of them care about each other, you get some nasty neighborhoods, and I hope that's one of the issues that needs to be addressed. But when we talk about commercial blight, and Scott made a great point, we have some serious problems downtown. To name a few, the Kiefer House, Stocks Mill, I guess that's two, not a few. But the Allied building is actually occupied and partially being used, and it's seen some improvement in its appearance, but it needs to be fixed up. The Cadence property, which is just a few blocks or a few houses from my house, has sat empty for the last several years, and no one wants it. It's a contaminated site. It's on the DEQ list. It's going to be very difficult to get anyone to use that as an industrial site again. It's going to sit there and deteriorate. It's not as big of an eyesore as the mill because it's not right downtown. But those need to be addressed, and those can be addressed if you have a staff that part of their time is completely dedicated to following up and making sure that the stuff that needs to be done is done. If the building is falling down and dilapidated, then there needs to be someone that can say, hey, this needs to be done. But there also need to be changes to the ordinances to make it easier to enforce and to expect more responsibility. When you look at buildings like the Kiefer House, they were given $75,000 of city and state money to improve the building, but it sits there with orange cyclone fence and 2x4s right there on the sidewalk right across from City Hall. I'm not sure what's going on with the mill, but it's been empty for a very long time, and I was optimistic about the optimism of the new buyer a few years ago, but nothing's happened. And it's time to move forward with getting some of these relics that are going to serve no purpose out of the way so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Ward 4 candidate Patrick Flannery, please.
Well, one of the ways to fix blight is to get these streets fixed. You drive down State Street before and after, and you're going to notice a big difference that happened. When that road was repaired, people now are cutting their lawns. The houses look better. So that's one thing to do with fixing these streets. Another way is consistent enforcement, to actually enforce the rules that we already have in the books, to make sure that the person doing the enforcement is applying those rules fairly and properly to everyone. Consistency will help, and to make sure that these people do what they're supposed to do. But also part of fixing blight, it's up to you and I. Help your neighbors. I have one neighbor who needs some assistance. In the wintertime, I help him out. He helps me out in the summertime. We help each other out. It's great. That's one thing to do, is if your neighbor is having trouble trimming a tree, say, hey, can I do that for you? Can I help you out? Because maybe you're taller. I'm an average height guy, but I have some short neighbors, and I have some tall neighbors, and they help me out. So that's one thing just to think about, is together we can also solve blight. And if you do have an issue with a neighbor, I mean, try to talk to them first. That's always my suggestion to everyone. If you have an issue with blight, just talk to them, see if they'll fix it, and then that's when you take it to the next level. Now, as far as the code enforcement officer, I feel that the city really missed out on an opportunity for savings here. We had a code enforcement officer who didn't do what I would consider the best job. I don't think anyone can be convinced of that, and that person left the city. Now, the city could have saved money there and not have replaced that person. And what I would have suggested to do is contract that position out. Have a contractor come in and do the code enforcement. They would get paid based on a simple formula of they first identify houses that have blight issues, and they get paid based on a successful resolution of that issue. That would entice that person to do a good job, to be consistent, and to get the job done, and would save the city some money in the same way, which would help us with the roads, which, as I said before, better roads will help us encourage people to have better houses, better property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flannery. Next, we'd like to hear from Emily Stack Davis, Ward 3.
I think there have been a lot of great ideas. I'd hate to dredge everyone through them. I think that we, hopefully the city did due diligence with as far as how necessary this position was. I look forward to a lot of the codes being enforced, since hopefully the personality and the prerequisites line up with what they need to do for blight. That's all.
Thank you, Emily. And Adam Stockford, Ward 1.
We're all definitely concerned about blight, and we all see it in our neighborhoods. Code enforcement makes me a little bit nervous because I don't want to see maybe an elderly person or a handicapped person, or maybe just a person down on their luck that can't afford to pay their house get ticketed, or can't afford to paint their house get ticketed for not painting their house. So I do think that the possibilities for abuse in a code enforcement system and blight, it's there. But yeah, I also agree with Scott that I think that it's something that the police should be doing. They've driven by many times. Our neighbors had a couch on their lawn for quite a while. Of course, I'm not going to tell anybody where I live at, but and the police drove by and they slowed down and they looked at it. And a month later, they drove by again and they slowed down and they looked at it. But how much would it really take these guys that are on the clock to get out and knock on the door to the neighbor and say, "Is there something you could do about your couch?" So that's pretty much where I stand on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Our next question: what can council and other city offices and officials do to attract more business to Hillsdale, including industrial, commercial, and retail? Mr. Watkins?
Well, the easy answer is fix our streets. That takes us back into that subject again. That's a tough one. I'm not an economics guy. Hopefully Patrick will get a chance to lend his skills to council. I think the best way we can do it is to make sure that everybody knows that, and let me back up a little bit. I don't know how, at some point in the past, Hillsdale got this reputation for being anti-business. I don't know if that was ever an earned reputation or if that was a perceived reputation, but when I got on Planning Commission, we were fighting it, and it still seems we fight it sometimes. I don't know that there's much the city can specifically do other than to make it as attractive and financially viable. I'm torn on tax abatements. I think I was going to total up all the abatements that we give away right now at the current time to look at how much we're not. I was actually kind of afraid because we give away a lot of money to entice people to come, but a lot of times some of those businesses, they wouldn't have left or they wouldn't have not come to town if they hadn't had that. It's a government program that's available, they're going to take it. And it's not something we can say no to anyway. It's a state program, and in the end, if we say no, then they can appeal to the state, and the state will say, okay, you can have it, and then it's like losing your job and suing to get it back. Yes, you've got your job, but now there's this tension. And that would be the same thing with businesses. So aside from, we give tax abatements now. I don't think we've chased anybody out of town. The hardest thing I've noticed to deal with is when businesses look at town. When I was talking about the Cadence property being a contaminated site, we had a business that wanted to come to Hillsdale and expand their operation. And it was a well-established business that had lots of people, and that was the building in town they wanted, and as soon as they looked at it, they couldn't have it. Or they could have it, they didn't want it because of the contamination, and who could blame them? And they ended up going elsewhere. The problem that we're facing a lot of times is that we don't have suitable locations for businesses. If an industry or a factory is moving, they have a specific need in a building, and it's much cheaper to move somewhere that has that building empty waiting than it is to start all new construction. If you notice, our industrial park is not nearly empty anymore. It's not bustling with 300 and 400 and 500 employee businesses, but almost every single building in industrial park has activity again. It's not to the level we would like it to be, but it's there. I really don't know. Like I said, a lot of this stuff, when I've talked to the economic development team and other people about what can we do to get businesses, like, there's people that try to come here, but at this point where we are right now, a lot of it is constricted by what is available for them to move into. If there's not a suitable structure, then they're going to find that structure because, like I said, it's much cheaper for them to go where the building is than to come and build new. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Sessions, your answer, please.
Economic development. I believe in an approach of economic development that centers around continuing to build the core of the community, which is the downtown area. The city of Hillsdale has a significant investment made in the downtown in the past 5 years that has helped rehabilitate a grocery store into a marquee anchored business. As mayor, I would like to see the city continue to engage with the Hillsdale Business Association, working more closely with the Chamber of Commerce and working with the business owners to take advantage of grants such as rental rehabilitation and blight elimination made possible by the state. It is my belief that by investing significant time in attracting and retaining vital businesses in our downtown, that it can work to our advantage when we go to recruit larger businesses to fill out the industrial park. My vision for economic development is one in which the city builds private and public partnerships with business owners and economic development agencies to promote growth. Growth can only happen when we are working together for one common goal. And as mayor, I would advocate that all agencies work together to make this happen.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. Ms. Davis?
We all would like to encourage and attract businesses to the area. We need to do it first on an individual level. You know people in this community and outside of this community individually who may, hearing about what a great neighborhood Hillsdale is or what a great community we are, how much you enjoy living here could be an encouragement to them. It seems small and little, it's rather grassroots, but communicating to the world outside of Hillsdale how much you enjoy living here also starts to attract other businesses. You never know who knows someone, you never know who might have a great idea or a business they're about to launch or something they're up to that they just need the encouragement that this is the place to be. We all feel that way since we choose to live here, but it's important to spread the word. The other encouragement for attracting businesses, there are bigger plans for how to bring them in and what we should do with our taxes or what we shouldn't do with our taxes. But I, for a little variety, would also promote the businesses that are here. We need to make sure that our policies, our ordinances support them and encourage them to grow, that we aren't standing in their way or discouraging them with extra burdens. I think that we also need to give them an opportunity to thrive and be a consistent city council and a consistent city government so that they can rest assured that they can move ahead with their plans for their business. I think they know best how they can prosper. It's just a matter of all being and staying out of their way.
Thank you, Emily. Mr. Stockford, please.
I use AT&T for internet, and my bill is about $50 a month just for internet. But I see that they're always offering, like, new customers $19.99 a month for internet. Now, I've been a loyal AT&T customer for like 5 years, so why are new customers getting all the breaks, and they stick it to me? And I think that we need to have that same attitude towards businesses, to like Emily said, to do things for our loyal businesses that have been in town forever. Another thing I want to talk about is tourism. I think there's a tourism opportunity in Hillsdale, and I think that first of all we need to let more people open up businesses in their homes. That'll help out. We need to lax up on like bed and breakfasts, getting people to come here and bed and breakfast. I think if we could get people to come to Hillsdale, to visit Hillsdale, They would see how great of a town that we have, and would go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And Mr. Flannery, please.
Well, I would get back to the theme of fix the roads. You fix these roads and it will help, because you cannot tell me that the state of our roads don't discourage business, don't discourage people from coming into our community. On my website, flanneryforcouncil.com, I had a comment made on that website about the roads. I put some pictures up, and I asked people, what do you think? And the response was, it appears to me that the city just doesn't care, that we don't care. I know that's not true. So how would I get economic development? The first thing is talk to the business owners that are in our community and ask them that very exact question. How do you think we're going to get economic development? Group those cities, or group those people into the large employers that we have, the sole proprietors that we have. Council should have a work session twice a year where we talk to these people. Ask them, what helps you right now in the city, and what are we doing that's actually discouraging you from growing your business? And then the city should correct those actions that are discouraging the business. Ask people who just moved in, why did you move in here? What helped you? And again, what did we do that discouraged you? If there's something that we're doing that's making it difficult, if there's too many hoops for people to jump through to open up a business, we need to correct that action. And we should work as hard as that we can to do that. But again, the one reason, the one main thing for us to find out how to bring in these businesses is just simply ask the ones that we have. Find out what they want us to do. Do they want more activities downtown, things downtown? We all know the great things that we have here, the things that bring people into Hillsdale, and we should capitalize on that, make some money off of that, and get more people into the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flannery. Okay, I've hogged the microphone way too long. So again, in case you've forgotten, Taylor Knopf is sitting to my right, and she is the city editor of the Hillsdale Collegian, and she has the next group of questions. Taylor?
Okay, so this question is for council candidates as well as mayoral candidates. How can city council improve communications to the public and become more involved in the community? And are tools such as social media tools such as Twitter or Facebook options you could start using? We'll start with Mr. Sessions.
I'm kind of like against the streaming line of social media, just because I think that Granicus is money that is actually wasted that can be put towards the streets. I'm actually a person that you should come to the meeting and be a part of the meeting. Granicus is over $1,000 a month and almost over about $13,000 a year, and that's money that can actually be spent back into the streets, repair, or something else that is needed with that money. I think that you could probably utilize the website more if you want to do like tweet or something like that, where maybe there could be a blog or something set up on that for a communication. I would be afraid though that would get out of hand, and you would get a lot more people writing bad things or discouraging things. So I would really be careful with that type of media. I'm like an old-fashioned person, I guess, in that respect, of where I think that citizens and residents should actually go to the meetings and be a part of the meetings. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. Mr. Watkins?
One thing I learned quick when I came back, and like I said earlier, I've been doing communications in one form or another for 20 years. And the one thing I noticed when I first got back was there was hardly any. I mean, we were still relying, the city had a website, but other than that, really we're relying on a lot of word-of-mouth communication. I think that's improved over time a little bit. It's still a challenge. As an example, we had a meeting last year when we were discussing the income tax, an informational meeting, and think we thought we did a good job of advertising. It was in the paper, it was on the radio. I think we advertised about as much as anything the city has done in a long time has been advertised, and out of 8,300 people, there were 50 people there, and I don't think it was because people weren't interested. They didn't know about it. Information sharing has diversified so greatly over the past 10 years, 5 years even, that it's hard to find. There is no single source where you can communicate and everybody's going to get that message anymore. So I think we need to diversify the way that we communicate better. You brought up Facebook and Twitter, which the city has a Facebook page, and we try to use it. The hard part, and this is my experience with Toyota, and I do work for on the Toyota Twitter feed and the Facebook page. Or I don't do it. I generate content that's on there, and I work with the people that do manage those. And you've got to have an effective Facebook or Twitter feed or any other social media account that can really be relied on, can really be a go-to source that people will monitor and pay attention to and share. You've got to have the time to generate that content. You've got to have not just, hey, we're having a council meeting next Monday, but also share information about local businesses and stuff. In order to do that, you've got to have a staff person that can. And right now, despite their best attempts and interest in doing just that, there's just not staff time. I think once the clerk position is filled, that will free up a little more time. Michelle Lauren has taken on some of the social media stuff, and that might give her some more time once the clerk position is filled. I don't know that we'll ever be able to, have that one spot. The website is great. The information, pretty much anything you'd want to know about the city, whether from events going on to ordinances or anything else, is on the city website. The problem is you've got to dig pretty deep to get to it. The streaming meetings that Scott was talking about, I think it's been a great benefit to the people of Hillsdale. I agree it costs too much. We are working to try and find a lower cost provider. That was the challenge. There's no cheap way to do it when you don't have the staff to do it. If we had 2 people that were on staff that could reliably and consistently take care of that end, we could do it for next to nothing. But we don't have that right now. And what we're paying is far cheaper than hiring someone on staff just to do that sort of thing. The streaming meetings, the numbers have gone up since we started. I agree the best place to be if you're going to be involved in a council meeting is at the council meeting. People don't work 9-to-5 jobs Monday through Friday in town anymore. People work all over the country. I drive an hour and 10 minutes each way to and from work. There's a lot of challenges to get people to come to the meetings, not to mention 80% of the meetings is not something you want to sit through, let's be honest. If there's something important, you want to be there and you want to hear about it, but there's a lot of the stuff that just is not. It's just the general mundane business of city that has to get done, and nobody enjoys it, but it's got to get done. When you can go online and watch the meeting, if you aren't able to make it or if you choose not to make it, you can see, oh, they're talking about streets. So I can click on the streets section of it, and it jumps right to that video. You can see what they talked about, you can get the information you want, and maybe you'll notice something else you're interested in. But if there's nothing else there, then you can move on. But if there's something that's important to you, you can find out, not just during the meeting, but after the meeting, months after the meeting. You can watch any council meeting from now until back in December, and everyone is continually added to that. We plan on adding other meetings that are probably just as boring. But there's other aspects of it that we can talk about another time. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Mr. Flannery, you're up next.
Personally, I'm a big believer in Facebook and in Twitter. I mean, I'm using that in my campaign. I think it's a great, cheap way to get information out to people. It's, I'm a follower of Mr. Watkins over here for various reasons. He lets me know many things that are going on in the city, even to the current menu and specials that are at one of our local delis. I really enjoy that. Twitter gets information out there. But as we all know here in Hillsdale, people get their information in various ways, and communication is important. One thing as far as the streaming of our meetings, $1,000 a month, that's just way too much to me. I can tell you right now that'll be a suggestion that I make as something we need to reduce. When I became aware of this, I was surprised. That is not a way to do it for $1,000 a month when we can get our information, our meetings online, and have people watch them by simply putting them on YouTube for a lot less money. For a Facebook page, I would suggest that we would contract that out. There are many people in this city that could do that and would do that for us if we paid them a stipend every month to maintain that Facebook page. Now the other communications, other things, you just go door to door is one thing I would suggest to my council people. Is talk to people in the city. Let people know that you're a council person. Get that information, that communication from people. Talk to our businesses. Where do they find out about events and things going on in this state of ours? Ask them how we can communicate with other businesses, with other people, to try and get them into our community, to get people to come to our events. And just simply ask other people what they think would help us communicate with you. And I would also encourage you all to attend the meetings. To watch them online is one thing, to read the minutes is another thing, but to come to the meetings. It's good to hear from the citizens. When I was on city council in Colorado, it was more helpful when a citizen came to basically talk to us, to be there, and then we could talk to them after the meeting. It was just amazing at how much more effective that was than a letter that someone would send in. And I can tell you that as a city council person, if I am elected, I would encourage you to call me up, to stop by my house and talk to me. I do have young kids, so I can't guarantee it will be the calmest, quietest conversation you've ever had in your life. And I have little ones, and I can't guarantee you that they will be dressed because some of them are at that age where I can't guarantee it. But I would love to have you come over and talk to you and to know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flannery. Mr. Stockford.
It's true that a lot of people, the lives that we lead today, that we can't get up to city council meetings. And it's also true that they do stream them over the internet. But I'd submit that there's a lot of people in Hillsdale that don't have internet access or that are elderly and don't know how to use the internet or don't want to use the internet, actually. So I think that communication is a two-way street. I think that it's important for the public, especially the people that want to be involved, to get up to the meetings. But I also think that as a council person, it's your responsibility to get out there in your ward, to knock on doors, to talk to people, and to find out. This has been an issue before when we've seen council bring things to the table that so many people in the community were against. It makes me wonder how much they were out there talking to the people in the community. So, just like Patrick said, if I'm elected to council, I work from home, so I have no problem at any time stepping away from my work for anybody to stop by the house and knock on the door. If I'm not there, I'm up here at the college, my wife's home, you can come in and talk to my wife. But a city the size of Hillsdale, we should not have a communication problem. You've heard of 6 degrees of separation. There's got to be, 2 degrees of separation in Hillsdale? We all know each other. We should all talk. It's everybody's responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stockford. Mrs. Stack-Davis.
I have chosen to have a private email account for my campaign that you are always welcome to send me emails about your thoughts, and I will respond promptly. I also have a Facebook feed, which advertises not only what's going on in the community, but other headlines that have come across that I think would be of interest to our neighborhood. And even the grand opening of Cake Time actually brought about 2 different families went down to the grand opening because it was on my Facebook feed. So that's my claim to fame for the evening. But in the meantime, these are good ways that we can communicate with each other. It is true that there is limited internet access and interest at times. So in addition to that, we, again, live in a small town. We have these conversations with our neighbors. We have these conversations at Kroger and Market House. And it's our own duty to, as council people, to disseminate that information. We're not only helping to make decisions, but we're also a prime candidates to go out and discuss this with our neighbors. In contrast, there's also a responsibility toward our citizens and our neighbors to be engaged and to be involved. Tune into WCSR, subscribe to the Daily News and the Collegian. Make yourself well aware of these issues. For better or worse, the city income tax brought an opportunity for us to all be in discussion about our vision and our planning and our desires for our community. So I encourage you to take up all of those, and as city council person, I will continue to post wonderful photos of activities in our community.
Thank you, Mrs. Stack-Davis. Miss England would like to weigh in on this as well.
As a regular attendee of city council meetings, I agree with Mr. Sessions, Mr. Watkins, and the other members here that it is best to attend the meeting and to see the interaction and to see what is going on at that level so you can have an understanding of how your council is working and functioning. However, for communications, I am also a big believer in Facebook. I run a Facebook page with over 1,700 users. It's Hillsdale Community News, and I also run some other Facebook pages for community organizations that are to get people to get the word out. I have my own campaign page also, and I am a pretty active Facebook user, and I think that the city can do better with a stable person in the clerk's office doing the Facebook pages. There's not a lot of communication between the also unknown that nobody's mentioned tonight is that the Hillsdale City Police Department also has a Facebook page, and that is a great way to get communication. The BPU has a Facebook page, which is also a great way for people to communicate when the power's out. You can get your feed on the phone and you can know, oh, the power's out in the street, but they're working on it. And squirrel got creamed over there on that transformer, and it'll be fixed in a few minutes. So I'm definitely an advocate of clear communication through social media for the city. But we also have a great radio station and a great college newspaper and a great local newspaper that does do a lot of the communication, and especially WCSR is really great about getting events out there and talking about the city council meetings and things that are happening. And we should utilize our resources. Also, if you want to know what happened at a council meeting, you can call and talk to one of your council members. Talk to the person who represents your ward, or call the mayor, and they will give you the information. Or even call the city clerk, and they'll give you a rundown about what's going on. So, social media and communication with the city does need to get better about communication, but also the citizens and the residents need to get involved. The city council meetings, I have attended over 600 of the meetings in the years, and oftentimes I'm the only person there, or there's one other elderly person from the high-rise or that serves on another board there. And it's sad to me to see that there are so few people who are really interested in what goes on in their community. But there are many who rise up to complain about the city income tax and how the roads are so terrible. Well, come and help us and help the city change that for the better, to make your community a safer and better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. England. All right, for our next question, how is the city's relationship with Hillsdale College administration and the student body? What changes can be made to improve it? And for those of you candidates with direct relations to the college, could you please address how you will be a fair-minded city council member and an affiliate of Hillsdale College? We'll start with Brian Watkins.
So I think today we've got a great relationship with Hillsdale College. I think for the most part we do have a great relationship. I think, like anything, it could always be improved. I would like to see from the city side, and not necessarily the city government side, but from even the citizens and local businesses, I think it's improved somewhat. But when it's homecoming at Hillsdale College, you shouldn't be able to come into town and not know that it's homecoming at Hillsdale College. One of the projects I've worked on is some video for the fair, and one of the gentlemen I interviewed was a Hillsdale College graduate who came from Chicago and fell in love with the fair in like 1972. And he's been back every single year since because he loves the fair. He drives from Chicago literally every single year. The man's never missed a fair. And the fair had this big impact, but he's got ownership in the fair and in our city. And he lives in Chicago. He's from Chicago. He spent 4 years of his life here, and he's never been able to let go, and that's incredible. And there's thousands upon thousands of people like him, and men and women both, that have come to Hillsdale College and made Hillsdale their home for a while and have moved on. And it would be great when they come back if they could see, hey, welcome back. And just in day-to-day stuff, you don't see much. We've got some banners that recognize Hillsdale College, but there's not. It feels to me if you drive downtown if you didn't know there was a college here, you wouldn't know there was a college here. I went to Northern Michigan University in Marquette, and you cannot get away from NMU logos and colors downtown and the businesses outside of houses. Just, there's a lot of pride in the community, and you notice it in the residential areas, and you don't know if it's college students or faculty that are flying the college flags, but there's plenty of recognition, I think, of the college in a lot of the neighborhoods. But when you drive downtown, I think we could do a much better job of recognizing that we have a great college here. A lot of things have been said that the college doesn't need Hillsdale nearly as much as Hillsdale needs the college, and there's some truth to that. They're a very prestigious university, or not university, a very prestigious school. And Hillsdale's in the news, like, it seems like every 4 or 5 years something puts us in the national news for 5 minutes, and sometimes it's really cool stuff, and sometimes it's like, oh, really? But, so, I think if we need to, try and find a way to, encourage the college and students to, enjoy downtown more. Talk to them. Find out what could we do to make it more enjoyable for you here, but also talk to the faculty, to the administration of the college, and say, I think we've got a decent relationship, but just like it was mentioned, to talk to the businesses, how are we getting in your way, or how are we not being maybe the best neighbors? And how can we help you, and how could maybe we utilize some of your services to help us? If we need to better a department that we might not be strong in, then maybe we could use some of their faculty that have expertise in that area as consultants, and maybe some of the students as interns to help and fill out. I think that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Mr. Sessions. Thank you.
Actually, I agree with Brian on a lot of this, actually. So, but I would like to see maybe a apparel store too downtown that sells like Hillsdale College T-shirts and sporting equipment, things like that. I do agree that business owners, I would like to see them represent the college a little bit more by maybe painting their front of their buildings and representing Hillsdale College during sporting events and things like that. I think that the city actually needs to talk to the students and find out what they want out of downtown area. And maybe we can look at things that they want and support them more by bringing things there that they would want to go to, like different stores or different restaurants. And then also talk to the facility or the administration and see what they would want out of the city to represent them. I just think that there can be a lot more support from the city and the businesses to the college. I think that is very important. I don't think that there is enough of that right now that's being done. And I would like to see, I think there is somewhat of a gap between the two, and I would actually like to see that come together. And I would like to see more people actually maybe go on Mother's Day at the Saga. They have a beautiful dinner, and there's so many people from the city there. And they also have other events too at Saga. They have business at the football games, business night, where they give out free tickets. So embracing those opportunities and trying to take care of that and making it better between the city, the businesses, and the residents of the city to come together with Hillsdale College is so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. Mrs. Stack Davis.
I think that the first thing would be that we hesitate to portray this as an antagonistic relationship. Sometimes we discuss the college and the city as though they're town and gown and they're at war with one another, and that's not really the case. So many of our faculty and their families and other administration and staff members of the city are deeply woven into our community, and we downplay that more than we need to. The other thing is that so many of our community members too also have degrees. I'm not here for the college kids to know. I'm not here as the only Hillsdale graduate ever. When you go out to Walmart and Kroger and Margaret House, it's full of Hillsdale College graduates. So you might be surprised. Also, I think that these bridges are naturally growing between the college and the community. If you think of the GOAL program, you think of the volunteer opportunities that weave the students into our life as a community. These are already in place and having an impact. I think that we as a city can continue to reach out perhaps to the college students and to show them, we use the term townie, and it can be a good thing and a bad thing. But instead of being townies, to weave them into our communities through our churches, through our local community civic groups, and giving them the opportunity to see the Hillsdale that we all know and love.
Thank you, Mrs. Stack Davis. Mr. Stockford.
So I was driving through Albion the other day, and it was homecoming week in Albion, and there was a big banner right when you drive into town that said Albion College homecoming weekend. And I wonder how much it would cost the city of Hillsdale to do something like that when it's homecoming weekend. I also wonder how much it would cost to do something like put a similar banner up like that when the kids first come back to school in the fall. But yeah, I think that what Emily was saying about the town and the gown, I've heard that a lot of times, and I think that is overplayed a little bit. Obviously, I'm a Hillsdale resident. I go to school up here. But, and this has nothing to do with the city, but for business owners, we see like Broad Street Market that's made a deliberate attempt to kind of cater to the college students, and it's worked out pretty well for them. So I think local businesses, if you do something like that, if you cater to the college students, that they will come out into the community and do some things. And I don't think that there's been enough of that's gone on, but that's a private matter. That's not a city concern. But yep, I do think that I think we see a lot more Hillsdale College students graduating and choosing to stay around town than we ever have before. I think the city could take a lesson from the college about a number of things. The college has made itself famous around the United States for liberty, so why don't we have a summer festival or something that celebrates liberty? We could get this is just me being idealistic, but we could get some of the professors to have speeches, and it would be good for everybody. That's all I have to say on that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Stockford. Mr. Flannery, you're up next.
I'll answer the second part of that question first. As I mentioned, I'm the Vice President for Finance here at Hillsdale College. So the question was, can I be impartial even with that position that I'm in? I can understand that question. In the world that we live in today, we look at the federal and the state government, and we ask that question every day: are these people impartial? Can they be impartial? Well, when you look at the local government that we have here, most of us here work in Hillsdale. We have jobs in Hillsdale. Could we be seen as being impartial because of that? It's a possibility. But I can tell you that if I'm elected as city council, the first night that I'm a city council person, I'll be sworn in. And when you're sworn in, you raise your right hand and you swear that you will serve the city. And I can tell you right now that I swear I will serve the city and do my best to make her better and to act in the best interests of the city. Now, as far as the second question, the relationship between the city and the college, I think it's a good relationship, and I do agree there's ways that we can work on it to try and make it better. Economically, you can see the difference. Here in the summertime, there's a difference in the businesses, both in when I order my pizza in the summertime, it's ready in 5 minutes, and I got to get out that door quick. And I got to get to church 15, 20 minutes early if I want to get a seat. Otherwise, I'm going to be standing, and with 5 kids, it's not a good thing. So the college brings a lot of good things to the city. There's a lot of things we can work on, both the infrastructure improvements at the college. We as the city can see if we can piggyback on that. Are there projects that can be done in tandem? Improvements that could be made that would help both the college and the city? If you take a look at what the hospital has done, the hospital has built a new birthing center. That birthing center is great. I was just there 2 weeks ago having a baby, or my wife was. I can tell you it's a great facility. It's attracting people here in Hillsdale. I know of one person at least who now will have their baby in Hillsdale because of that facility. But between the city helping out with that and helping to get all those zoning and other things solved, and the hospital building that, it was a great relationship. And I think that is an example of what the college and the city could do to have a better relationship than is currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flannery. This next question is just for the mayoral candidates. How do you plan to unite the council as a group of policymakers for the benefit of the whole city? We'll start with Mr. Sessions.
Unifying the council. To unify the city council, we would need to find common ground. It seems to me that common ground is better Hillsdale. I know that my opponent agrees by making Hillsdale a better city, as he has his campaign motto is believe in better. And I know that every council member should always want to make Hillsdale a better city. The council and the mayor may have different opinions, but the ultimate goal should always be what's best for the city of Hillsdale and its residents. With that always in mind, we should always be able to work to find a workable foundation and tackle the issues facing our city. I would also like to see more of an emphasis on committees. As of recent, I have seen where we have strayed away from that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. Mr. Watkins, you're up next.
I think unifying councils shouldn't be as challenging as I think either Scott or I might have thought it would have been after sitting here and seeing some of the new people that are definitely going to be on council. I'm encouraged, and I'm also kind of glad that Patrick's not running for mayor right now. Actually, I kind of wish he was, but we have some serious competition. But I think working together, it's something that I think we started off 2 years ago, at least when I got on council. It seemed like we started off, and the streets were the problem with the city, and they were the problem with council. The way we went, there was two different directions that council wanted to go, and there wasn't, at the beginning, there wasn't much room for compromise, and by the time we got to the end, there was no ability to compromise. I think starting off fresh, the streets are still a problem. It's a problem that's going to have to be addressed, and I think as long as whoever is mayor makes sure that everybody's voice is heard, and not just, yeah, I hear you talking, but actually listened to, and that those ideas are combined with the ideas from the community, that we can be actually working together will bring everyone together. And everyone's not always going to agree, and I think that's a good thing. I think the nice thing about having 9 people on council is the diversity of ideas. It can be glacial at times to try and get things accomplished because too many people have too many differing opinions, and coming to a consensus can take a very long time, but in the end, it's much better than having 9 people saying yes every single time and really not getting anything. So I think starting at the beginning, working together to solve the streets problem, but also the other issues, would be the best way to go out doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. We do have one question for our city clerk who's here. What do you think the main purpose of city clerk is, and do you think the city clerk should be an appointed position rather than elected?
The main purpose of the city clerk, the role of the city clerk is to keep the records of the city and to run the elections. I do not think it should be an appointed position. I believe that the people again voted this down also in the last election, overwhelmingly. I believe that the city clerk also maintains the qualified voter file, which is responsible for updating and keeping concise records of when residents move or enter into the city, when new college professors come and become registered voters. or when people move out or move away or become deceased and are no longer voting, so that we don't become Chicago. The role of the main job of the city clerk is to maintain the election records and to maintain the records of the city and to take the minutes of the council.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that very much. Which brings us to the final question of the evening for our mayoral candidates. If you are elected mayor, what do you hope to see accomplished during your term in office? Mr. Sessions.
I would like to see Hillsdale progress. We have a wonderful downtown area. Have industry growing, growing a tax base for residential and commercial. A better Hillsdale, one where everybody gets along, treats everybody respectfully, listens to everybody. Probably the most important is listening, understanding what people want. Knocking on doors, asking people what they need, want, what they have to have, fixing the streets, economic development, just making us stronger, and a united Hillsdale is one of the biggest things that Hillsdale needs to happen, because we have wonderful people here, the best people I know in the world live here in Hillsdale. Best people. They deserve the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. Mr. Watkins.
So now you said this was the last question for the mayoral candidates. Is this the last question for the entire evening? Phew. This was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Along with Scott, a better Hillsdale obviously would be great. Realistically, we are never going to be able to accomplish in 4 years as much as we would like to. And as mayor, your scope of what you can accomplish is limited by the council and by the people, which is good. We're not kings, we're mayors. So ideally, if I could pick one thing to be done while I was mayor, it would be to have a sustainable, realistic plan to fix the streets in place. We talked about at the beginning, $39 million to fix the streets. Well, if you look at the pace that we're at right now, that's a 260-year fix. If we were able to, pull some money out of the budget and move it over and double what we're putting in now, well, that's a 130-year fix, which is better, but I would prefer not to have to wait for my great-great-great-grandkids to get to enjoy the streets. Whether they can all be replaced in our lifetime or not, I don't know. It's a long building problem, and it's a difficult solution to fix. But that would be the big thing, to see where we could mark on a calendar, maybe farther down the road than we'd like, but we could mark it down the calendar and realistically expect that's when we'll be done. Whether it's 35 years or 40 years or however we have to structure it, to a realistic time frame for streets. Along those same lines we talked before about council uniting around an issue. I think that would be nice, but I also think it would be nice to be able to kind of bridge the gap that seems, I don't know if it's always been there, I know it's there now, where it's the city of Hillsdale and the people of Hillsdale. And we're all citizens of Hillsdale, whether you're a citizen that's involved in the city government or you're a citizen that lives in town. We're one and the same. The people on council are your friends and your neighbors and fellow citizens that have been picked by you to make decisions for them, in their best interest, but also to involve you, but also to handle the silly stuff that we just don't have time to involve everybody. If everybody had to have a voice in, if we were going to pay this, the company for mowing the grass, and everybody had to agree on that, we would never get anything accomplished. But the bigger issues, there needs to be more citizen involvement, and it's a two-way street. I mean, if we need to reach out to the people and say, we want your opinions, but we need to hear from the citizens as well, not just when they're upset, but when they're concerned, when they have ideas. I mean, I talked about a diversity of ideas with council. we could have a greater diversity of ideas from people. And I think if people shared their ideas and could see that they were at least considered. Sometimes someone's going to suggest something that's either been tried before and failed, or there's a very good reason why we can't do that. But there's also times that someone could have an idea and be like, wow, you know, we've never thought of that. Everyone on council's been going over this issue for months and we haven't figured out how to do that. And that idea can come from somewhere else, and we could incorporate that. So the more involvement that people have, the more people can see that it's not an us versus them. We're enforcing the rules and helping to guide things because that's what the citizens prior to us decided needed to be in place. If there's rules that need to change, the citizens can change them. So citizens can come together and make anything happen if they come in a group. They have more power than all of council does, actually. So I think if we can work together and become Hillsdale and not the city of Hillsdale and the citizens, I think that would be a great accomplishment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Again, would like to remind those of you in the audience, those of you watching online, and those of you listening on WCSR that Election Day is 2 weeks from today. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Everybody in the city votes at the library. So you don't have to worry about where do I vote. You vote at the library. We vote in different rooms at the library, but we all vote at the library. One simple, concise place to vote. We would encourage you to vote. As all of the candidates have said tonight, more community involvement is needed in our city. And